My name is Alden MacDonald. I'm executive chef here at Northern Michigan University, and today I'm going to show you how to make lightly curried butternut squash soup. So the first thing that we need to do is we're actually going to start warming up the oil in our pan. So I have a soup pot here, but you can use any sort of soup pot you have at home. It doesn't have to be a fancy one with fancy handles. It could be a side one. If you have a big one, like a 6-quart one that has one handle, that works too. As long as it has a nice flat bottom and can hold lots of liquid, you're good to go. So first thing I'm gonna do is add a little oil to the bottom of my pan. And we're gonna start warming that up while we cut our vegetables. The reason that's so important is because you want your oil to be nice and hot when you start putting your vegetables in there. If the oil isn't hot when you start putting your vegetables in to start sauteing them, then the oil will actually kind of soak into your vegetables a little bit, and instead of them having a nice saute where the moisture comes off and you get a little bit of caramelization on your onions, instead of you getting that, you're going to get kind of soggy vegetables. And even though we're going to puree the soup at the end, it does affect the flavor. So that's why it's important to make sure your oil is nice and hot. So we're going to start with an onion. I'm going to show you how chefs cut an onion, because I can tell you it will save you time, it will save you finger cuts, and you'll look like a total professional and a boss. So the first thing you're going to do is we want to get rid of some of these skins, right? But we don't want to get rid of as many skins as you might think. So we're going to take this off the top. Notice when I hold my knife, forefinger goes here, thumb goes here, and I wrap around. That's very important because this is why this knife is designed the way it is. It has room for your fingers to go here and control. It's called a finger grip and a pinch grip, and it's very important. My left hand, because I'm right-handed, I curl my fingers over and I put them on the onion. That way I'm not hitting the tips of my fingers, which is really, really important. And I know where the knife is because I can feel it on my knuckle. So I always know where my knife is, even if I'm not looking at my hands. I don't suggest doing that at home, but it means that you're safer. So tucking that, making sure your thumb is always behind your other fingers is also really important so that you are not cutting the tip of your thumb. So I'm gonna cut the end off here. Boop. Then the back here, we have all these roots. We don't want those roots, but we do want the core of the onion. So I'm just gonna take this off, and as you can see, the core is still intact, and that's very important to being able to cut your onion up quickly and efficiently. I'm gonna cut this in half. Notice I make a dome with my fingers to make sure that the blade is always pointed away from my hand or my fingers for safety. I'm just gonna peel off the top layer. And now we have a nice flat edge to work with because we don't want wobbly vegetables. Wobbly vegetables mean cut fingers. Okay. So then you can do this 2 ways. This is for a soup, and we don't really necessarily need to have these perfect, but we do want them about the same size. So for this first half, I'm going to show you how to do this for soup and quick things. In the second half, I'm going to show you a little more precise way. If you're doing, say, for a salad or something else that you're going to see the onions in, I'll show you that way. So for this one, I'm going to curl my fingers over. Your core of your onion is faced away from the tip of your blade. And then this is the top of your onion. And I'm just going to take the tip of my knife, push it down. Now onions have layers, right? Which means that when I cut this, now I've cut basically strips, but notice I didn't cut all the way through. It's still held together. It's not falling apart. That's where the core is really important, because the core will hold all those together. Now I just turn it and I slice, and if you look, they come off in beautiful dice. And although I'm showing you, you can see how fast that is. Now this piece isn't quite all the way through, so I'm just going to chop it like this. Now I don't like to be wasteful, so I take this piece here and I'll actually cut it like this, because now all I have left is the core. Boop. But the rest is going to go in my soup. So that's the quick soup way of doing it. The more precise way, there's just one more step. I'm going to take my cutting board to the edge here. I'm going to push this aside so you can see. First, a lot of times I see when people try to cut really precisely, they'll try to compete with the board. Their hand will run into the board, that type of thing. Me, I bring it to the edge, and I let my knife sit on the board, but see my fingers go beyond the edge of the table. That way you're not like curved or uncomfortable. You want to be comfortable when you cut so that you're safe. So I take my fingers, put them at the top of the onion so that I'm as safe as possible, and I just run my knife this way, going back but not all the way through. Again, the core is going to hold that onion together while you do that. And now you've created precise cuts this way. Then I'm going to go back the way I did before with the other half and go this way. The trick is you want to keep your slices as even as possible so that when you cut it, the pieces all look the same. And again, notice how fast this is. Even with me going slow to show you, it goes really fast. Then, oh, those need, that's the very end. There we go. Okay, so you can see slight difference. This, although they're all relatively the same size, they're slightly different. You know, you have some curved pieces and stuff, whereas these are a lot more square and are a little fancier looking. So when you look at these two, this is for soup. We're going to dump this all into our pot here in a second. But if you're doing, if you want to look fancy, you can just take that one extra step and it looks really, really clean and crisp. So I'm going to get my little core of my vegetables here because we're using this for soup. We're not being wasteful. And then I'm going to just take my whole cutting board, put it right here into my pot. Oh, and I hear the sizzle. That's what you want to hear. If your oil starts smoking, that means it's probably a little too hot, especially if you're using a canola or an olive oil. So just turn your heat down. If you're an electric burner, I am cooking on fire, which is great, but if you're an electric burner, just pull it off for a second. Turn the electric burner down, let it cool down, and then put it back on the burner once it's cooled down. Don't wait for your electric burner to cool down because your stuff will burn before it's cooled down. So then I just have a spoon here, and I'm just gonna stir this. One thing I see people who don't do is they don't season their soups right away. The first thing I'm going to do as soon as I start putting vegetables in is I'm going to throw a little salt in there. And the reason that matters is that salt will actually help the vegetables release some of the moisture and will make a better saute on your veggies. I'm going to turn this up just a smidge. Okay. Next we're going to do pepper. Pepper. So I'm going to show you how I cut my bell peppers super fast and safe. So what I do first is I cut the top off. I've already washed my vegetables too, by the way, so make sure. I pop that out, and I don't want to waste any of this pepper. This is flavor. The top and the bottom are just as good as the sides, so we're going to set those aside for a second. Then I've got a top and a bottom and a nice flat surface. I'm going to take the tip of my knife. And so if you look at the pepper, you have these little spots here. These are your little ribs, and the inside is where the pith is, and that's where the bitter stuff is when you are eating a pepper. So we don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find one of those little ribs. I'm going to cut right beside it right here, making a flap. And then I just slip my knife in there. And I'm just going to cut like this along. And it cuts that core out. Ta-da! The whole core. And then you don't have the seeds going everywhere and you're trying to scrape up the seeds and they get stuck on your fingers. None of that. I have a few seeds, so we're going to get rid of those. Okay, so now I have this big piece of pepper. So I'm going to cut this in half so I have a manageable size piece that I can work with. I'm going to just cut a little bit more of that white off because, again, I don't want it to be bitter. Boop. It's important to make sound effects while you're cooking as well. So then I'm just going to take my knife. And notice my knife is really sharp. This is important. When you are cooking, it's important to have a nice sharp knife. If you notice, a lot of people will flip their peppers over or their tomatoes. When they're cutting, notice when I cut, I can cut skin side up as well because my knives are sharp. A sharp knife is a safe knife. So if you can keep your knife sharp, I would highly suggest you do that. All right, so here, because this is soup, I'm not too concerned. I just want them to all be relatively the same size. So I'm just going to go through, chop these. Notice I kind of line them up and let them kind of do their natural C shape when I cut it. And the reason that's the case is because why fight the natural shape of the pepper? It's going to go in a soup. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's getting blitzed up at the end. So let's let the pepper be the pepper and make our lives a little easier and safer. So for this part, again, I'm just going to slice here. Then I'm going to turn that, give it a quick slice because we're just giving it a quick chop because it's going in soup. Same thing here. Switcheroo. Okay, again, I'm taking that whole cutting board. I don't want to move the hot thing to the cold thing. I want to move the cold thing to the hot thing, right? And so I'm going to take my whole cutting board, go here, right into my pot. All right, so this next step is really important. I'm going to One thing that's really important is now we're going to add our seasoning, and we're going to do this before we add our squash, because the squash is just going to cook and get soft at the end. It doesn't really need to saute with the other vegetables. So I have my seasoning here. What we want to do is we actually want to toast our seasoning with the oil and the vegetables for a few seconds, and the reason that's important is because it actually brings out some of those oils and makes the flavor better. So we're going to pull our garlic, we have turmeric, we have cumin, we have coriander, and we have a little bit of cayenne. Not very much, that's according to your taste. Another secret is, do you have a curry powder you really like? Just add the curry powder. Skip this, all of this, and just add curry powder. Okay, so then I'm going to just stir this up, and while we work on our butternut squash, these will toast, and that'll be really good. Make sure that your heat isn't on too high, or else you'll burn your spices before. And again, if you're not ready, if this is done and toasted, you can smell it, it's really aromatic, just turn the heat off while you work on your squash. It's okay, it's soup. It'll stay, it's not gonna get ruined. Okay, so then we're gonna talk about our squash here. So in the directions, it tells us to use a peeler. So this regular vegetable peeler is really nice. This is a peeler made by Swiss Mar, and you can find them elsewhere, that actually has little teeth. I don't know if you can see that or not. Has little tiny teeth. And the reason that matters is this is gonna grab the skin and it's going to peel so much easier. So I'm gonna show you first this one. So it works, but you kind of struggle a little, right? Now we're gonna use the teeth one. See the difference? It's huge, huge difference. So when you peel a butternut squash, you wanna peel it till you get to that nice, rich orange color. So notice this is kind of like a yellowish orange, and that's a richer orange. That's what we want to get to. So you're gonna have to go over a couple times, and that's okay. But when you use a peeler with little teeth, it takes no time at all. Great. So we're just gonna peel this. Boop, boop, boop. We're gonna put this over here. That's going in my compost. Why make trash when we can make dirt? Okay, and then I'm gonna go this way. Notice I'm using the top of the squash as my handle. No need to struggle. All that white and all that green can make it bitter, so you don't have to get every last stitch of it off, but you wanna get a lot of it off. A little bitter is actually good for flavor, but you don't want a lot. Okay. So we're peeled. Boop. Next, I'm just gonna take the top off, take the bottom off, but I have a wobbly thing. That's not good, right? We just talked about that, not good. So before I do anything else, instead of coming up here and splitting it in half, I'm actually gonna take the top off. This is butternut squash. It's a tough butternut squash, there we go. That piece is all, I can cut that up. This piece has the little bulb part in it, so now it's not going to roll around on me. I'm just going to cut this in half. And ta-da! So, I'm going to take a spoon. Be right back. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my heat off on this because I can smell it. It smells really good. But again, I don't want it to burn. I just want it to toast. Okay, so then here I just take a spoon and I'm just gonna scoop this out. Scoop. And these can toast just like pumpkin seeds, just so you know, if you really wanna eat them, they're delicious. You clean them off, toss with a little oil and salt, pop them in your oven, roast them about 350 degrees. Make a great snack. My kids, when they were little, they ate them, they loved them. Okay. And we're actually almost done with this recipe. This is a great thing you could do in a crock pot. This would be great in an Instant Pot. It would take no time at all in an Instant Pot, if you have one of those at home as well. Okay, so for this part, we're going to just cut straight down into strips, because we're just gonna cut chunks like this. And then I never like to have any piece bigger than what my knife can handle, and that's important. Don't try to cut any piece of anything that's longer than your knife. So if I want to be extra safe, I'll cut this in half, then cut it here. It's great if you're unfamiliar with the knife, or just do one layer instead of two. I'm just gonna throw that right in my pot as I cut it up. Another trick that I do at my own house is if I'm prepping a meal and I know I'm gonna use an onion later in the week or a pepper later in the week, I'll cut all the onions and peppers I need for both meals at the same time. And then I just pop whatever I cut extra back in my refrigerator, and I come back later, and every single time I'm always like, yes, because I've already done part of my meal prep, and it saves me time. Because inevitably it seems like the later in the week I go, the more pressed for time I am in my own life. And so anytime I can save myself even just a few minutes later in the week is time well saved. So this part I'm just gonna go like this with, cut it down, and we're just gonna chop this up too. This is going in soup, it's gonna get cooked. And so it's all right, even if all your pieces aren't exactly the same, that's okay, because this is getting chopped up and cooked until it's soft, and then we're gonna just blitz it up, which I love to do. All right. There we go. Done. Again, cold to hot, not hot to cold. Throw that in there. I'm gonna put my heat back on. Boop. Okay. Then I want to keep that heat kind of high, because now I'm going to add coconut milk. This is about 1 can worth, 15 ounces. A can of coconut milk is about 15 ounces. So in case you're like, I don't know, what's a can? It's 15 ounces. Then I have some water as well. We've really well seasoned this already with all of our curry seasonings, so you don't have to worry about that. We already put salt and pepper in here at the beginning, or salt, so I want to throw a little pepper in here. Okay. And then I'm going to bring this mixture to a simmer, and I'm going to let it cook until it is, until it's really soft and it's simmered. Okay, so that's what it looks like when it's ready to be pureed. So I have this here. I'm gonna move this over. And I have this nifty immersion blender, which I love. If you don't have this, you can do this with a blender, or you can do this with a masher. If you don't have it, you can just mash it up. It won't be quite as smooth, but it'll still be just as delicious. It does have turmeric in it, so be aware, turmeric stains. So you want to keep, if you have an immersion blender, keep it under the surface of your soup. And with my pureed soups, I kind of like to leave a few chunks in there. I like the mouthfeel of a few veggies. So when I do mine, I don't always puree it all the way. I'll just puree it most of the way and then leave a little bit. I'm gonna put that there so it's not messy. Boop, boop. Here's my little thing. So I'm gonna stir this, and I've just got a few chunks left in there. I like that, for me personally. If you like a completely smooth soup, that's fine. Now this is the part where you taste it. So I'm gonna grab a tasting spoon, we're gonna taste it, make sure it's seasoned correctly, and then we're gonna dish it up and enjoy it. So you're gonna season this the way you like. If you like a little saltier, a little less salty, this is where you'd season it. And then you enjoy your beautiful squash soup. Enjoy.